Larry the Cable Guy tweets, "This cool evening air really makes it tough on your lungs to jog." I would assume. Kamal Nanjiani said, "Just got really jealous my cat knows nothing about the election." I'm Johnny Mac. It's your daily comedy news for Sunday. Let me do the housekeeping at the front for a change. If you listen every day, you could skip ahead about a minute. But if you're new, I also host something called the Weekly Comedy Thing on the Live by Live app. That's Live X Live if you're looking for it in the App Store. On there are several comedy radio stations that I program, and I host the Weekly Comedy Thing, which is kind of sort of like this, but more like really hardcore stand-up focused, and I get to play the bits in between. So you can check that out on the Live by Live app. It's called the Weekly Comedy Thing. And I'll invite everyone to subscribe to the podcast if you don't already, and you could subscribe on Apple Podcasts or follow on Spotify or the usual suspects everywhere from Amazon to Pandora. My social media handles, my personal one is at McD Radio, at MCD Radio. The one for the podcast is at DCN Pod. Feel encouraged to use both. And the Facebook page is facebook.com/Daily Comedy News. From the New York Post, Constant Comedy, How I Started Comedy Central and Lost My Sense of Humor. It's a new book written by a guy named Art Bell, not the UFO guy, a different Art Bell. And he told a bunch of stories in the book, as you would imagine. He said in early 92, Comedy Central hired Al Franken to mock the State of the Union speech. It was called the State of the Union Undressed. The night of the speech, Bell was at the studio watching Al Franken and producer Billy Kimball prepare. By 7 o'clock, Kimball said to Franken, "Al, you need to go to makeup. We go live in 2 hours. Franken said, "Did you just say we go live? I thought we were taping it." "No, I'm doing this live." And he started walking towards the studio door and said to nobody in particular, "I'm calling my manager." They thought he was kidding, but he wasn't. They somehow got Franken to come back, and Comedy Central had its first hit. Bell said, "As I watched, I felt we were entering unclaimed comedy territory and planting our flag. It was our first foray into using news and politics as a platform for comedy. That night was a turning point. We discovered what we were good at." The 1996 version featured Dennis Miller handling the comedy. The broadcast was going smoothly, but an hour in, Miller said, "I have to take a leak real bad." And Miller walked off the stage live on air, and he said, "Oh man, where's the bathroom?" The problem was he was still mic'd up. "There's got to be a men's room around here somewhere, or a woman's room. Hold on, this'll have to do." The sound went dead as the audience at home watched the State of the Union, while Miller peed into a garbage can in the hallway. When the show ended, Miller was like, "Oh, God, what have I done?" Miller ran to the men's room. Bell says Dennis was sitting on the floor between the sinks and the stalls, his back against the wall, his head down, his hands over his face. And Miller said, "What have I done? I've killed my career." Bell said, "You were great out there." Miller said, "I just took a leak into a garbage can on TV in front of what, 2-3 million people?" And Bell said, "Audio only." From Variety, they caught up with famous comedian Andre Braugher. You know him from Brooklyn Nine-Nine and Homicide: Life on the Street and whatever that Ray Romano show that I liked was called, Men of a Certain Age, something like that. Brooklyn Nine-Nine is fantastic. I completely missed the boat on that. I didn't even pay a single iota of attention to that until like season 7. And then I realized, you love everything Andy Samberg does. Why don't you check out the sitcom, you idiot? So I did, and it's really good. I haven't finished my watch of it yet, but it's really good. So Braugher, who is probably my favorite actor, actually, he said, "For comedy, everything's new. I'd never done it before. Am I any good?" I remember turning to my wife and asking her, "Is this funny?" And she said, "Yeah, of course. You're not being deceived." But I kept looking at it, saying to myself, "Is this good?" I couldn't really judge. He says his character, Holt, is a really, really wonderful character, but I think in anybody else's hands, it might have been something foolish, something silly. Andy Samberg said, "He'd have you believe he had no comedic skills before the show started, but we all know that's not true. That said, he's gotten even better as the seasons have gone on, and very often when he's concerned that a joke is sacrificing the greater good, his instincts are correct." There's been a lot of talk about how this show will handle things heading forward. We've got the protest movements and COVID. And Braugher says, "The show needs to address it. Brooklyn Nine-Nine has to commit itself as a comedy to telling the story of how these things happen and what's possible to deal with them. I don't have any easy answers, nor do I have a window into the mind bank of this writing staff. Can you tell the same story? Can anyone in America maintain any kind of innocence about what police departments are capable of?" Braugher is curious what his character will do. He says Holt might be a staunch defender of the NYPD, or he might try to burn the whole thing down. I know that he's a pragmatic man. I do know that he's a loving, if robotic person. I'm anxious to see what that's all about, and I have no idea what Season 8 of Brooklyn Nine-Nine is going to be, because everything's changed. Nate Bargatze caught up with Columbus Underground, and they were like, Hey, Nate Bargatze, tell us what it's been like assembling a tour in which you're using venues that don't typically host stand-up comedy shows, meaning like drive-ins and stuff. Nate said, I mean, the preparation, everything's regular in terms of writing jokes and getting to the gigs. All that's the same, but performing, yeah, that's what's different. We've done a couple shows like the one we're doing tonight. It's in a parking lot under a tent, like outside. So some of them could be like that. And then you have your drive-ins. They're both cool in their own way. These ones, you can hear the audience laugh a bit more, but at the drive-ins, it's a little harder to hear people laugh. If they sit out of their car, you can kind of hear the people up front. You just got to trust and hope the show's going good when you can't hear them laugh, but it's very cool. It's very cool to come to these drive-ins. We get there in the morning when you're just kind of there by yourself all day and night until the show, which is kind of neat. So last night, I could kind of hear the crowd. Your timing kind of goes from when you hear some laughter. Maybe there's a beat after that you're kind of waiting. But I'm going to jump ahead. I'm going to tape a special at the end of this, so I'm trying to get my set out for that. It's interesting to do that, and then you've got to kind of slow yourself down a bit, and that's where the trust is. You got to go, all right, if I'm going to say somewhat true to the timing of me being in the audience, I've got to sit there in the quiet and trust that they're laughing. I hope that they're laughing. I could be way off. Who knows? Jermaine Fowler is working on an animated comedy. This from NewIndianExpress.com, your home for comedy news. They say the animated comedy is loosely based on Jermaine's formidable years growing up in a working-class town in Prince George's County, Maryland, with his family. Fowler will serve as the creator, writer, and executive producer. And Vulture wrote about how it's okay to enjoy comedy shows these days. They said, there's one digital comedy show whose image has haunted me for months, in-crowd comedy. I became aware of it in early July when comedian Taylor Tomlinson posted a photo on Instagram. She was on stage doing stand-up in front of a wall of screens. Displayed on each was the face of an audience member watching from home. For all in-crowd shows, which are announced on no particular schedule via Instagram, there are 2 ticket options, $15 to watch the show and $30 for a VIP ticket to be one of the faces the comedian sees. The writer said it took a while, but each comedian was able to lock into a rhythm. Alonzo Bodden, who's 58 now, wow, was hysterical, but it took him half his set to realize it. Alonzo said, it's throwing me off because every joke there's a slight delay before everyone laughs, and I'm like, oh shit, that one didn't work. What else do I have? I'd hate to bomb in front of a simulated crowd at a warehouse in Sun Valley. That's pretty funny. And the writer says, next time, I'll pay for the VIP package. Not me. I'm cheap. I'll go for the $15 one. That's your comedy news for today. I already told you all the stuff up at the front, so goodbye. See you tomorrow.